Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
Listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
The deity of the World Wrestling Federation will take his place at ringside next week.
Joe Giammatteo.
Jake Roberts is not drunk. Jake Roberts is a winner.
My God, I quoted that too. I am the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on October 14th, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Hershey Park Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and features Kevin Kelly and Jim Ross on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. He's vicious. He's vile. He shows no remorse. And we get a great audio clip and visual clip of, "Get that piece of crap out of my ring." He shows no mercy. He's stone cold. Lately, though, Shawn Michaels has been looking beatable, and Stone Cold smells blood. Stone Cold cuts a great promo. My favorite line of it: "This ain't the Bible, son. This is Austin 3:16, and tonight, Shawn Michaels, I'm gonna whip your ass." And straight into the first match of the night. Vader, with Jim Cornette, defeats Phineas Godwin with Hillbilly Jim by pinfall in approximately 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Before we go anywhere near this match, we need to take a look at last week. Sid was looking amazing, no-selling the Vader splash, but unfortunately that view on our screens here tonight was ruined by cartoon hillbilly music in the background. What could have been a very strong visual image of Sid hulking up was offset by going on in the background. Things get going in the ring pretty quickly. So quickly, in fact, that nobody was paying attention. Everybody was talking about a myriad of other things. Even the timekeeper must have been doing something else because the opening bell was never rung. I had to calculate the match time based off of the first punch I saw instead of the bell. Jim Ross is just as red-assed in this match as previous episodes. Commentary is talking about Vince McMahon and company men and barely acknowledging the match here at the beginning. JR says, "I don't care what Kevin Dunn says. I don't work for him. I'm going to be here." Just doing a lot of yelling and bitching. And from what he was talking about, it really didn't sound like he needed to be that worked up about it. Vader wasn't looking very good here. Too many things that he was doing were looking weak. But then Sid comes out, claiming to be from Arkansas, and that is apparently quite distracting to Vader, since Sid is actually from Florida, and we all know it. And when it got to the attempted slop drop, there hadn't been a single good-looking move in this match. The Vader bomb and the pin looked slow and sloppy and tired, and we hurriedly moved on to the next segment. Unfortunately, I feel that this match is pretty representative of Vader's entire run here. He was slow and looked lazy through a lot of it. The work was sloppy as a result. Nothing he was doing was coming across as intimidating, maybe because his opponent was just as big as he was. And overall, there was nothing special at all about this match, which is doubly unfortunate because this is trying to get us excited for Vader and Sid at Buried Alive next week. Didn't work. Joe, what did you think of our show opener?
Yeah, this was the shits completely. Like you said, it doesn't get me too excited about Vader and Sid coming up here. And not only that, but we come off of this great intro to Raw with the Steve Austin stuff. Yeah. And then we immediately get this shitty match, which again, probably going to flip over to Nitro, see what's going on there. Sid comes out. I think you guys know that he has no business being out there, but he's there. Is this supposed to get us excited for that match? I guess, but it doesn't.
All three of us are going to be in agreement here. As the match starts, Vader and Phineas, they try and go kind of fast, but there's a couple angles where you see the upper section of the seats at the Hershey Arena here, and they are completely empty and blacked out. So I don't think the lack of audience were people going to the bathroom or getting up and getting hot dogs or beer. I just don't think they ever showed up. This was a pretty light crowd. And with what they've been giving us here for the last month, I don't blame them. I didn't think that Phineas did a terrible job. Vader did. Vader, just like we've been seeing him, he just looks tired and uninterested. But Phineas actually pulled off a pretty decent-looking body slam on Vader on the 400-pounder. I thought that was impressive, but it wasn't enough to help save this match in any way. When Sid came out claiming to be from Arkansas, I got a little bit of a laugh out of JR saying that that's nothing that I would brag about. I mean, I don't have any issue with Arkansas, but I'm guessing JR being an Okie boy, he must. But yeah, this match was, I guess, just more of the same that we've seen out of Vader. Just kind of very forgettable and at times downright ugly matches and moves from Vader. He just looks slow, like he doesn't want to be here. So yeah, I hope things could pick up from this match, but we didn't start off very strong.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody behind the scenes there said, "Hey, Leon, we've run out of ways to make you look weak. Now it's up to you." And he said, "Okay, boss, let's do it." Well, we're going to move it along here. There's a commercial pitching the Survivor Series weekend. It was really heavy on the Bret Hart imagery, which is something that's been getting more and more and has been just really weird the past couple of weeks. Joe, I think it was you that said, we're not even sure if he's still coming back.
Yeah, they were selling a jacket last week.
I have my fingers crossed that he will return and maybe regain the championship. I don't know. I mean, it's possible he might go to WCW. We don't know what's happening, man.
Maybe. Anything could happen. It's crazy.
I mean, the thing is, up till this point, they are selling it as if he may not come back.
Yeah.
For weeks, they've been selling that. But then magically, last week, we're selling a Bret Hart jacket. And then, like you said, this week, we're seeing some stuff that hints as though he's coming back. So, yeah, it's just kind of confusing.
After that little ad for the jackets, they look terrible. I've never been a fan of a denim jacket, and especially
Clearance.
an airbrushed one. Clearance, yes. We come back to JR in the ring. He's there ready to introduce and interview Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect has been stealing Hunter Hurst Helmsley's women right and left because that's normal. That's just what happens here. That's the new normal. Mr. Perfect is really talking up his match next week, so much so that they end up repeating themselves a few times. How many times can you ask if Mr. Perfect is ready, and how many times can Perfect say that he's in perfect shape?
50%? 75%? 80%? 99%.
They more or less just asked the question and answered it 5 different ways during this interview, and that was it. That was the substance of it. We quickly moved to a petting zoo voiceover to pitch the WWF Big Bang Boom Tour.
So obnoxious.
Kind of looked like they recycled Adam Bomb's entrance video stuff to make this. This was a brief segment, but I have to pause here to ask, Joe, what did you think about Mr. Perfect's interview with Jim Ross, as well as the other new information in this segment?
Well, the Mr. Perfect interview is just disappointing because I don't think we're actually going to see him in the ring. It's disappointing because Mr. Perfect, to me, during this time, they could have really used him. I mean, he could have been bigger than Shawn Michaels as a champion, or Bret Hart even. So it's just a shame that it didn't work out because, I don't know, he's probably, about 40 years old at this time. So, I mean, he still would have had a few pretty good years left in him, but, it just didn't work out, I guess. The interview was fine. Nothing shocking was revealed here. The Big Bang Boom is like the most annoying tagline for Todd Petting Zoo.
Isn't it fitting, though?
Isn't
it fitting?
It really
it's
is.
coming out of his stupid mouth.
Yes.
Linda wants alliteration, damn it. Give it to her.
The interview with Mr. Perfect, I thought it was fine, and Mr. Perfect cuts a pretty solid promo here. But as we've mentioned, many times, unfortunately, we know the future here. If we could somehow take away, the memory of what actually happens and the fact that he doesn't wrestle and put ourselves back, then I think I would probably be excited because they've been telling us for 5 minutes here he's wrestling next week. So if that is actually what, or at least what we thought is going to happen, I think that would have been exciting. But sadly, we know that's not going to be the case. At the very end of the interview, when he starts walking out of the ring, though, I got a glimpse of a person in the crowd that had on a Rod Woodson jersey, so I was happy to see that.
Kevin Kelly said that it's been 13 months since we've seen Mr. Perfect in the ring, but it's been way longer than that, right?
Yeah. It's been since early 93.
Yeah, he had that King of the Ring match with Bret Hart in 93. We haven't seen, unless he meant special guest referee, maybe?
Yeah, like the last time we actually saw him.
Maybe. But yeah, it's been like 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, if you want a little bit of a spoiler, whenever I go to look up the match card, I'm able to look ahead and see what we're doing so I can plan my notes. And they've been selling this so well. They've been doing this so confidently. And Joe, last week during your news segment, you had mentioned that there's talk out there that they're trying to maybe get him to negotiate out of the Lloyd's of London thing. So they're making an effort. And I had to look ahead. They've got me worked. I'm marking out on this so hard that I had to check and confirm that we indeed do not get Mr. Perfect next week, despite the fact that they've repeatedly said that he will have a match on Raw next week. Bunch of fucking liars. Well, we're going to go now into our next match. Jake the Snake Roberts defeats Jerry Lawler by pinfall in 10 seconds. As Lawler was coming to the ring, we had to break for commercial to highlight those airbrushed denim shirts again. And of course, we came back to Lawler in the ring on the microphone, making alcoholism jokes. I'm guessing commentary was just as tired of it as we are because commentary talked over it the entire time. So much so that I couldn't understand either Lawler or commentary. There was a lot of conflicting sound going on.
It's for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining, but I maybe would have liked to have heard what commentary was saying.
Yeah, like bad TV.
Yeah.
You can't hear anything anyone's saying.
And then it was time for Jake to come out, and he's late to the ring, he's stumbling, he's carrying a bottle in a brown bag. Commentary and Lawler talking over each other has continued throughout all of this, and as Jake stumbles up the staircase to the ring, Gorilla Monsoon comes out to do something about this. And instead of being clever and not spoiling the surprise, we get full visual and vocal confirmation, almost to a cartoonish degree. They might as well have done an exaggerated wink and point. Vocal confirmation that Jake is indeed not drunk and is instead looking to trick Lawler. I think I would have preferred to have been surprised. We break to commercial again and come back to Lawler still talking. But now the surprise is ruined. Whenever they go to tie up, Jake kicks Lawler in the gut. Jake hits the DDT. Jake wastes a quick second celebrating and then pins Jerry Lawler for the 3 count. My favorite part here was Kevin Kelly yelling, "Jake Roberts is not drunk. Jake Roberts is a winner." Joe, you did it much better than I could. And of course, Jake takes the time to dump whiskey on the king. Then he got the snake out and roughed it up a little bit, whipping it around the ring before we move on. I'm pretty sure I remember watching this match as a kid. I don't remember what I thought of it at the time, but I distinctly remember Jake tricking Lawler. This was still a waste of time, though. Ryan, what did you think of this match?
I mean, it was a waste of time, but it was very short. So I guess it's the closest to a victory that we were going to get out of this match. How much can I really add to it other than, I don't understand why they had to ruin the payoff by showing us the camera angle of him giving away that he's not really drunk to Gorilla. That's disappointing, but the match was only 10 seconds. So like I said, I'm going to mark that down as a victory. The only other thing I'm going to say as maybe a possible victory is hopefully this is the blow-off match. This is the end of it. Hopefully we can finally stop with all of this bullshit.
Yes, please, for the love of God, make it stop. Yeah, everything about this was horrible. Bartlett, you mentioned this before. Jim Ross called the snake Revelations. Because I remember you asking about that when he came back, when Jake came back originally, when they told us what the name of the snake was. So he kind of snuck that in there, Jim Ross did. And the other thing, Jim Ross, this whole heel turn thing is not good, but some of the stuff that he's saying is hilarious, especially about Vince. He was noting how Vince doesn't even know the names of any wrestling moves or holds. And like just some of the shit like that to me is like, that's totally real. That's Jim Ross basically shooting, which is hilarious. But yeah, everything about this match was awful. And like you said, Ryan, I hope this is, please make this be the end of it.
It's interesting to think, what kind of a feud or angle or story, however you want to phrase it, what kind of a feud can be blown off in a 10-second match? A very shitty one is the answer. It's a rhetorical question. We're going to move it now to something a lot more enjoyable. The real Double J, Jesse James, talking about that final match and the botched interference that got him to where he is today. He goes in detail, kind of doing like a play-by-play breakdown of what happened. It's mostly just repeating what's already been said, but he gets a little more in-depth with it this time. And I think it's hilarious that we're using these circumstances, attempted interference, to get Jesse James over as a babyface. It was neat to hear Jim Johnston talk here. I'm not sure we've ever heard that before. And, if all of the talk about Jesse James's victimhood isn't enough to get him over, well, we find out that apparently he is an Operation Desert Storm veteran as well. This is practically Vince McMahon's wet dream. Ryan, the new information here was minimal. What did you think of it?
Yeah, not a ton of information, but still good to see it. I'm happy to see Jesse James and looking forward to it. I did also have to laugh about them pushing in his, I guess, foxhole stories he's going to tell us next week. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am never going to complain when I see Jesse James and Jim Johnston working in the studio. But the Desert Storm stuff, I kind of wish they did not throw that in there because it's just a cheap way to really babyface the shit out of him. And they don't really need it. Like, save that for later. Save that for something else. It's just kind of thrown in there and we don't really need that right now.
Yeah, he's doing a great job on his own, talking this up. And we've already seen that he's not that bad in the ring. Of course, I mean, I'm pretty sure the only time we've really seen him seriously work was against Shatner on a pay-per-view.
No, Shatner was on Raw. He had a pay-per-view match against someone that actually looked pretty decent. The very last episode that he was on, or the very last show he was on, he had a match.
Did he?
Yeah.
I hate to say it must not have been that good if we can't really...
No, I remember us talking about that it wasn't bad, but it wasn't against anyone fantastic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do remember being impressed by how well he did considering how green he was. So
Who? Rhodey?
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things too about Road Dogg is he's low key like one of the best mic guys, especially in the Attitude Era. I mean, that guy could fucking command a crowd.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a stretch to say that I bet that all three of us could probably repeat the New Age Outlaws entrance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Verbatim.
Yeah, I mean, The Rock and Austin, those types of guys kind of upstaged him a little bit. But, I mean, that dude was awesome on the mic. And it was almost like he was a professional DJ or something. Like, it just came natural to him.
Mm-hmm.
The WWF's answer to Flava Flav. He's the hype man.
Yeah.
Hype man for the ass man. Well, we've still got a couple years at least before we get to that. I'm looking forward to it, though. Before then, however, we need to go into our next match. Freddy Joe Floyd defeats Hunter Hurst Helmsley by countout in 4 minutes and 7 seconds. Freddie Joe Floyd was out first. Hunter Hurst Helmsley looked annoyed as he had to step around that tombstone in the entryway. That was pretty funny. Jim Ross on commentary is bitching some more about Kevin Dunn here. Whenever they get to the ring, Helmsley handcuffs his valet to the corner at the outside. I'm pretty sure that's illegal, but we're going to work with it here. The work starts off great, though. I especially liked Freddie Joe's fireman's carry on Helmsley. That series that they traded here throughout the start was pretty good looking. Like I said, just the fireman's carry, the first few sequences up until the vertical suplex. And it was during that vertical suplex, I'm pretty sure Helmsley lifted Freddie Joe by the dick on that one to get him up. The camera angle seemed to suggest that he had grabbed Freddie's...
honked him.
For some extra leverage. But then, of course, Mr. Perfect is out, and we can't pay attention to the work in the ring anymore. Mr. Perfect pulls out a handcuff key because he's perfect and leaves with a perfectly willing young woman who doesn't stop smiling the entire time and doesn't act like any of this matters to her. She is apparently an object to be traded or stolen and has no agency in this transaction. Mr. Perfect does stop to give the handcuff key back to the policeman that he borrowed it from on his way out, though. Obviously, this is too much for Hunter. He goes to pin Freddie Joe, but lets Freddie Joe kick out, so Hunter can go chase Perfect. This draws the count out while Hunter confronts Perfect in the entryway. Perfect punches Hunter, and Hunter drops into a pile of golden glitter. The valet never loses her smile as she starts to bend down to help Hunter, and Perfect jerks her by the arm and drags her away. My final note here, that was a perfect working punch. Joe, I think this could have been an extremely enjoyable match to watch if we hadn't been distracted by the storylines going on around it. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if I'd say extremely enjoyable, but I mean, it was okay. Freddie Joe Floyd is a jobber, which was featured as a jobber of the week not too long ago. So he doesn't really impress me that much. I mean, I know he would do good things later on in ECW and other things, but I don't know. Nothing about the match was great to me. There's so many Kevin Dunn references. I don't understand why. I don't know. Vince must have been screaming at JR to mention Kevin Dunn.
Like anyone knows who the fuck that is.
I know.
Watching.
Say it again. Say his name.
Say it.
I'll tell you what, one thing about the match, I'm always impressed at Helmsley just beating the living shit out of his opponent when he has him in the corner. It's just really become a staple for him, and I love seeing it every time. And this thing with Mr. Perfect, this is some of the shittiest creative. I just don't give a shit about any of it. I love both of these guys. I love Mr. Perfect. I love Hunter Hurst Helmsley, but I just don't care about this story that's been dragged on for weeks and has made no progress at all.
And that's really the main problem with it. If they would have done this angle for maybe 2 weeks, that could have worked. Like if we saw him come out twice and do this. But we've seen it for going on a full 2 months now, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Like a full 2 tapings at 2 cities have been the same thing. Like Hershey, how many times did Hershey see it? 4 times?
Yeah.
These same fans saw this happen.
No wonder
4
there's
times.
so many empty seats.
I mean, this time they try and change it up a little bit. They add a kink in the plans with a handcuff, but, you know, it all ends the same. Mr. Perfect has the handcuff key, and this storyline, they really need to get to the end of it and stop dicking around. I guess next week. They're saying next week, regardless if it's Mr. Perfect or not, maybe we're going to move forward next week. So hopefully.
Well, yes, hopefully. We'll stick with that. We're going to maintain optimism there. Somebody else that's maintaining optimism, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's going to be calling out Bret Hart once again. Stone Cold wasn't able to get a hold of Bret before at that pay-per-view in Mind Games in Philadelphia. So instead of whipping Bret's ass, Austin is going to whip the ass of the guy that whipped Bret's ass, meaning Shawn Michaels. PlayStation Slam of the Week was next. That was Henry Godwin hitting the slop drop on the Bulldog. No idea when that happened.
Non-title, I guess.
More than a week ago.
We then got a video package highlighting Mr. Perfect's perfection again. Next week on Raw, Mr. Perfect will be taking on Hunter Hurst Helmsley. And then it was time to introduce Sunny in the ring. She comes out to cartoony stripper music from the 1930s.
Auga!
Yeah. She should have had one of those big white circle things covering up her private parts as she danced around in the ring. She's here to debut another big canvas of her. It drops down with some pyro. And I loved Jim Ross saying that this was a waste of time. Take a brief visit now to the cemetery to see Mankind and Pallbearer. It's raining there. Mankind looks great. He's all muddy and wet and disheveled, while Pallbearer looks great too, but he was all clean and neat underneath a big black funeral umbrella. It was just a really good image, the juxtaposition between the two of them. And that's it for this mid-match segment. Before we move on, Joe, what did you think about the news that we would be getting Mr. Perfect in the ring next week? It's guaranteed now at this point. And Stone Cold's promo on Bret Hart and all the rest.
Yeah, I mean, the Austin interview was so quick. I don't really have much to say on that, but it's the typical Stone Cold Steve Austin quick interview. And Mr. Perfect, again, it's just more lies. Why even talk about it?
Lies.
And this Sunny interview, promo, whatever you want to call it, is just really strange. It's just poor timing because, you know, hey, we have this really good looking girl who's really talented and can really talk, but we got nothing for you. So, hey, you're really hot. Let's just make a big banner and drop it. I don't know. It's just not very creative at all, but we'll see where they go with it. And the Mankind promo is the same type of stuff we've seen for the past 3-4 weeks. This is how they decided to approach the build up to that match. Instead of having any sort of confrontation between these two guys, we're just getting these black and white videos, and they're good, but I mean, I don't know if I'd want to see them 4 weeks in a row.
To Stone Cold again, yeah, just a quick standard promo from him. The Sunny things, yeah, Joe, I agree. It just felt weird. It was like they just said, hey, fans, here's Sunny, and now she's gone.
Yeah, it's like they're foaming at the mouth for this woman, and it's just like, just get out there and
just
drop
get out
this banner.
there, walk around, and then get out of the ring.
Play some cartoony stripper music.
Cartoony stripper music.
The Pallbearer Mankind vignette, I enjoyed it like I have for the whole month. I thought that this was another great promo, especially with it pouring down rain, just added extra greatness to this vignette, having Pallbearer under the umbrella. And I know I have heard stories about the filming of this one, about how it was pouring down rain and it was supposedly pretty cold out that day too. And it took them a while, and Mick Foley, being the good sport that he is, just fucking rolled around in that cold mud all day. Is this the first time that Mankind called Pallbearer Unky Paul?
I think so.
Yeah, he threw that in one of his screechings, and I think it's the first time, so that was a positive out of it too. I thought that these have been good, and I continue to like them.
Agreed. I don't see anything wrong with them. It's been a much better way to get us into that story as opposed to, you know, Vader and Sid. Well, let's move now into our next match. Farouk defeats Alex the Pug Porto by pinfall in 2 minutes and 1 second. Sunny is going to be joining commentary for this match. And whenever they put Alex Porto's name up in the chyron there up on the screen, it just says the pug.
That's all he goes by now.
Deadly.
Farouk is still wearing that goddamn helmet, and it is announced here that Sunny and Farouk have had an amicable split. She is no longer managing him, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but no longer managing anybody now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they just had her come in and walk around. There's no one.
We have no idea what to do with her.
As the bell rings to start the match, we get not one, but 3 different screens superimposed upon the screen, the actual match, all going on at the same time. The entire right half of the screen is Crash Bandicoot gameplay, and the left was just graphics stating PlayStation presents Buried Alive. It was impossible to see the ring or anything happening in it. Thankfully, the ref must have told the guys in the ring to wait a minute because they just stood there waiting until the whole thing went away. Once it went away, they were able to tie up. The work didn't look too bad here. The Pug has shown that he can hang with some of the big dogs in the past, and that doesn't change here. However, in this case, that means selling for Farouk, as Farouk smears him across the ring like dog shit. I loved Jim Ross saying that helmet is embarrassing. Kevin Kelly conveniently ignored that comment. Farouk's spinebuster to the Pug looked fantastic, and then Farouk hit a Dominator. Kevin Kelly called it a tiger bite. That got the pin and the 3 counts. The work looked good, Farouk looked like a badass, and Sonny, surprisingly, kept mostly quiet here. All around a decent match. Ryan, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought a very strong match for Farouk, a strong squash match. Sonny telling us from the very beginning that they had this mutual split, I think was for the best. Joe, I think you brought that up a month ago or so, that you wish that we would just forget about her being his manager, and that's what we're going to do. So that was good to hear here. And I did think Farouk looked good. He looked strong like he typically does, just working in his stiff way. And I also had to highlight Jim Ross bitching about how stupid Farouk's costume is. Especially the dumb helmet. That was just golden. I know Red Ass JR here has been annoying from time to time, but Bartlett, you brought it up a little earlier. He drops these nuggets, though, that are great, and this was one of them. The highlight of this entire match, though, was that spine buster that he caught the Pug in midair and just viciously slammed him to the ground. That looked amazing, and so did the finisher. Yeah, I thought it was a very strong squash match for Farouk. He looked good.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think that the Pug did a very nice job of getting his ass completely kicked in this match.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're supposed to do when you're in the ring with Farouk. Yeah, the jokes about the headgear and everything was pretty hilarious, and hopefully that will also go away soon, just like his manager.
Yeah, it's kind of funny here that, JR is saying this stuff, and you almost wonder if, everybody is expecting him to be red-ass JR because they want him to do the heel turn. At some point, they told him, go get yourself over as a heel. And the way that JR knows is by taking the truth and amping it up to 11. So he's probably bitching a lot harder and a lot louder about some things that he feels strongly about, but that doesn't change the fact that he still feels kind of strongly about them. Now he just has free reign to say them out loud. And I wonder if some people in the office were listening to this and stopping and thinking, because who before this would have said, hey, Vince, that helmet is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's probably not a whole lot of people that would have had the balls to say that. I mean, if anybody, it would have been Ron Simmons, but he was just trying to get in and get going,
Yeah, he was just getting his foot in the door here. Certainly wouldn't have been Pritchard.
Yeah.
That looks great, Vince.
Yeah.
We should give him 2 helmets.
Maybe JR is really doing us all a favor here, or trying to, at least. Well, guys, let's take a look at Morpheus. Oh, wait, I mean Ahmed Johnson was over on Livewire. Looked just like had the glasses going on with kind of like a David Putty jacket, though. Farouk had called into Livewire while Ahmed was there being interviewed. Ahmed says he's going to put his foot in Farouk's ass while Petting Zoo looks terrible and Sonny poses off to the side. The race card gets brought up somehow here, but overall this came across as genuine, especially Ahmed threatening to come to Farouk's house. And then Farouk responding by asking Ahmed what a woman would want with half a man, referring to Ahmed apparently only having 1 kidney now. The tension here felt real because it probably was real. Ryan, what did you think of this segment?
I thought it was pretty funny. It went a little bit long, and we didn't really learn that much, but I thought these two guys, they bitched at each other pretty good.
I ain't mad at you. Just like, yeah, this was great. I loved this. One of the reasons why I love this is because this almost sounds like the beginning of the Nation of Domination. I'm not going to look ahead, but just the way that Farouk was talking here and the fact that they kept bringing up that he was an All-American football player, like they're not saying shit about him being a gladiator in this. And it got me thinking like, oh man, I wonder if they are going to ditch this bullshit gladiator thing and let Farouk kind of do his thing. They're having a great argument here. I loved it.
You know, you bring up a really great point, and I can't believe that. I'm pretty sure we haven't thought of it, or maybe just haven't mentioned it up until now. Nobody has talked about what it means exactly for Farouk to be a gladiator.
Yeah.
He's obviously a gladiator. He's wearing the goddamn helmet and the loincloth armor shit that they put him in, or whatever it's supposed to look like, the teal stuff.
The Techno Team 2000 gladiator.
He's definitely not embracing the gimmick that Vince gave him, and glad that he did not.
It's not just him, though. It's everybody. Sonny never talked about what it means for him to be a gladiator. Commentary never touched it. I mean, definitely Farouk, but can you think of anybody?
Sonny, I think the very first time that she introduced him said that he is a modern day gladiator. Mm-hmm. And that was the only explanation that we got.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I do remember that. But I mean, I guess I'm just not satisfied with that as an explanation.
Right. But that's it. Yeah.
Like, okay, did they pull him out of like a lion pit?
You wanted to hear the whole backstory, like Jean-Pierre Lafitte and why he's a pirate.
Yeah, I mean,
and his family's gold being stolen.
Yeah. I mean, it still sucked, but they put a little effort into it, at least with that. Maybe it's because Vince hasn't been on commentary a whole lot.
Maybe.
That's a mystery that I hope someday gets answered. Just where exactly they found a modern-day gladiator. Or where Sonny found a modern-day gladiator is the better way of asking it.
Looks like he must be a gladiator in, like, the Andromeda Galaxy or something.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, it's the one we've all been waiting for now. Let's go into our final match of the night. Shawn Michaels with Jose Lothario defeats Stone Cold Steve Austin via disqualification in 5 minutes and 32 seconds. My first note, I can't help but constantly notice how mismatched Stone Cold is with his entrance music. That's the last thing that needs to go from that damn ringmaster gimmick. We cut to a video of The Undertaker out in the graveyard here after the rains have stopped, with a nice effect on his voice echoing from the bottom of the empty grave. That was almost cinematic, and I especially loved that final scene where Undertaker says that this is the final thing mankind will ever see as he tosses some dirt onto the camera lens. Apparently, mankind is going to be fucking murdered and buried. It's unsanctioned, so that they can probably get away with that.
I can't believe Vince McMahon allowed this to go on.
Yeah. Then it's time for Shawn Michaels' entrance, and I love the fact that he almost fell over the tombstone in the entryway and then made fake, spooky, scary faces at it as he stepped around it. Like, way to get that over for us, Shawn. Thanks. Shawn stripped for about an hour and a half while Stone Cold waited outside, and JR took some time to bitch about Vince McMahon again. As soon as the match gets started, we go to Vader and Jim Cornette, watching this match in the back. We came back, but then we went to split screen again. Cornette yelling and Vader woofing. The work here was looking good. It wasn't anything flashy. Some really strong holds and throws, though. But then split screen to see Psycho Sid. Sid looked and sounded psycho, so that was good, but it was also a huge distraction from what looked like great work going on in the ring. It was kind of hard to tell with a split screen, though. Michaels and Austin were trading pin attempts repeatedly. That looked great. Austin dodging the sweet chin music. That looked fucking fantastic. It's not often that a dodge can be made to look that good, but the timing, the distance, where he was in position compared to Shawn whenever he dodged dodged it. It just looked great. We break to commercial on a dodged Stone Cold Stunner and come back just in time to see Vader hit the ring, drawing the DQ victory for Shawn Michaels. Yeah. Shawn has to fight them both, and it looked a little terrible. Savio Vega comes out to help because apparently he and Austin are going to have a match at Buried Alive this Sunday. That's the first we're hearing about that, right?
I guess, yeah.
It doesn't really matter, though. Savio gets a stunner and gets put out of the ring in about 2 seconds. Then Sid hits the ring, and Vader runs away. As Vader is exiting the ring area, though, Fake Razor and Fake Diesel are standing in the entryway watching for some reason, right behind that tombstone. In the ring, Sid and Michaels bump into each other and start yelling at each other, but then Austin and then Sid and then Vader, and I stopped caring halfway through this as we faded to black. I have to be honest, guys, we were looking forward to this, and I ended up really disappointed here. Not necessarily with the match in the ring, though. This was designed to get everybody interested for the Buried Alive pay-per-view, which, as the finisher for a go-home show, this is better than what we've got the past few months. They actually made the attempt. However, this is the same old method of throwing people out there in a schmoz finish to get the most amount of big names on the screen in the last 60 seconds of the episode. And it was just really inappropriate and ineffective here, especially considering the match card for Buried Alive. None of these guys were interchanging during this finish in the right way. It felt wrong, all of it. Joe, what did you think of this match and the way that our go-home episode of Raw ended?
Well, I can't believe that I would say this with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels having a match. This is probably the worst go-home situation that I've seen ever. Like, what is happening here that's going to make me want to pay the $14.95 or whatever to watch the pay-per-view? Michaels doesn't even have a match.
Right.
I don't even know what the hell he's going to be doing. Stone Cold Steve Austin, we just found out, is going to have a match against Savio Vega for no title,
sure, that
nothing.
sounds good, but
yeah, no title on the line, nothing. I mean, I guess they're really trying too hard to set up this Vader versus Sid match and get us to care about it because, man, I was really loving this match up until Vader comes in. They're trading just back and forth counter wrestling going on here. Both guys sneaking out of each other's finish. I mean, this was awesome. And then Vader comes out and it's fucking ruined. I don't give a shit about Vader or Jim Cornette at this point. Just let Sid have the match against Shawn Michaels. I don't need to watch. I don't need to watch these two. And then Fake Razor and Fake Diesel. What the fuck? Why were they there? I just don't get it.
It's such a shame because the ring work between these two was great. Anytime we were able to actually see what was happening in the ring, just the pace of the match, it was all good shit. But like so many other times, just can't focus on it. From the very beginning, we go to a split screen with Cornette screaming and I give a fuck about Vader barking into the camera. Go back to the fucking match.
You can hear the heavy breathing.
Yeah. I mean, come the fuck on. They go back to the match and, Stone Cold, he does a great job of selling this punch from Michaels. He just crumbles to his knees and falls backwards and stumbles into the ropes, just kind of like earlier with Hunter selling Mr. Perfect's punch. It just looked great. But no, back to Sid in a split screen where he laughs for a minute 20. He just laughs. And then I thought, okay, that will be over. No, JR has a follow-up question to ask Sid to extend this split screen. How many distractions could you get in here? I say that, and then, well, you could at least get one more, Vader, to cause disqualification. He comes in only to run away from Sid, and then Diesel and Razor are just standing there? What the fuck are they doing? Why are they there? It's almost like just putting it in our face is remember this stupid angle? Here it is again. I don't understand how they could turn a match between Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels into such a terrible, terrible ending. It baffles me. It baffles me to think about it.
People don't want to see Michaels and Austin, pal. People want to see beef in the ring. People want to see Razor and Diesel, and we're going to give it to them. That's probably what it was. Ugh. Vince doubling down on all of this. That's kind of what it felt like. You know, Joe, you said earlier, you know, Shawn Michaels doesn't even have a match in this pay-per-view. And we just find out about Steve Austin having a match. Savio's here for all of 2 seconds. And how much star power can you cram into the last 60 seconds? Because cramming star power up our asses in 60 seconds is what gets us to buy the pay-per-view. Apparently, according to them. It's not working, though. Well, that's it. That was the end of our episode. So let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you go first, please?
So for my highlight, I'm going to go with Farouk's match against Henry Joe Floyd.
Henry Joe.
The pug? You mean the pug?
Right. Farouk and the pug. That is going to be and mainly Farouk, especially the spine buster. Like, I'm kind of just giving the highlight to that spine buster from midair because I thought it looked really great. The low light is not necessarily the Shawn Michaels Stone Cold match, but everything that happened at the end there. And the real shit being rubbed under your nose was fake Diesel and fake Razor just standing there for no fucking reason. Get them the fuck off my TV.
Okay, my highlight is ending the Hershey shows. It's over.
Yeah, good call.
It's been bad.
Yeah, I said that about the Wheeling, West Virginia shows a couple months ago, but these 4 weeks in Hershey has to be the absolute low point of 1996.
It almost sounds like a horror movie, 4 weeks in Hershey.
Yeah. It's no wonder there's so many empty seats. This is the start of the fake Razor, fake Diesel bullshit. They don't even get to see Undertaker or Mankind because we have these videos for 4 weeks. So they didn't even get to see those guys. This is the absolute low point of 1996 for WWF. Thankfully, there's going to be some really good shit happening after this trip to Hershey. But my God, I'm glad it's over.
They took the idea of taking the Hershey Highway a little too literal.
Yes.
Oh,
these 4 shows have given me the Hershey squirts. And my low light is just, the 4 shows in Hershey. Highlight is getting out of there, and low light is just the 4 shows in Hershey in general. Horrible.
Hershey, Pennsylvania is your new world of shit.
I hate that I have to say that, but...
It's right down the road. I could literally spit on it from here.
Yeah. The way that their shitty formula works, where they do the first live show, then the next 3 are taped, like, it's fucking... Nitro's been live for over a year. Like, just go live.
Yep.
We briefly talked about it last week, but it is becoming glaring as to why WCW took over for 83 weeks.
Right.
And, again, we just said, thankfully, they're going to right the ship soon.
Yeah.
And then, but for a little while, the damage is already done. Even though the WWF is going to put out a superior product, they're still going to lose out just because they pissed off people
because of this
so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of shit like this, they had to work so hard to get that viewership back.
Yeah, and it's shit like this that it gets me a little tired sometimes, honestly. I love doing this. I love doing the podcast, but this is just, it starts to grate after a little bit, some of these shitty shows.
Yeah, these have been really tough to watch, yeah.
It makes you want to, smack yourself in the forehead.
The problem is when you hit a section like this, you get a whole month. You get 4 just back to back to back to back of just, Jesus, what am I doing?
What am I doing with my life?
But then, you'll get lucky and then you might get a whole month worth of good shows for some reason. It's just, it's up and down, strikes and gutters right now.
Yeah. For my highlights and lowlights, I went with JR calling Sonny a waste of time and calling Farouk's helmet embarrassing for my highlights of this episode. My lowlight was just that there was too much going on here. Just trying to get so much shit in that it dilutes the message and ultimately becomes tedious and frustrating. That's going to be the motto of Hershey, Pennsylvania. Welcome to Hershey. We are tedious and frustrating. Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around October 14th, 1996 for us?
Yes, Dave Meltzer, and from the Wrestling Observer, he is reporting that after a bidding war, the likes that have never been seen in this profession, Bret Hart appears likely to be choosing the World Wrestling Federation for a deal that may pay him more over 4 years than any wrestler in history with the exception of Hulk Hogan. The belief is that Bret made his choice on October 10th after a meeting with Vince McMahon after changing his mind at least twice during the week.
He was offered a significant percentage of those denim jacket sales. As a Canadian wrestler, he can't say no to the denim jacket sales.
Was this the famous 20-year contract or whatever?
It probably is. There's no...
They're not saying what it is right here. No details.
It's so new right now that Meltzer's just kind of like, it's almost like one of those things where it depends on who you talk to.
Right. They just know he's signed with the WWF.
Yeah.
Details of the contract unknown.
And it's a huge deal for WWF, but details are unknown. But he did mention that the initial offer from WCW was believed to be $2.2 million per year guaranteed over a course of 3 years. But he then got word that WCW upped their offer to $3 million per year with a maximum of 180 working days per year.
Shoo.
That actually sounds pretty accurate as far as what we've heard from Bret Hart's documentary and the Screwjob stories and everything. $3 million per year was turned down. There's a lot of speculation about the figures on the WWF deal, depending on who you talk to during this time. Sources close to Bret Hart are claiming it's just under $4 million over 4 years. But like you said, Ryan, I think we find out later that it was, $1 million per year for like 25 years.
Yeah, for some obscene amount of time that we know Vince is going to honor.
Yeah. Did it even last a year? I don't even
maybe a year.
Well, speaking of deals, there's no word on exactly what the deal is with Mr. Perfect. Supposedly, Vince McMahon is going to buy out his disability policy and get him to return, but there's a lot of skepticism whether he really wants to return. Supposedly, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, has told his friends that it's all just part of an angle, but the way it's being pushed, it's hard to believe they would do that. Dave Meltzer says we will all find out live next week. Just quickly, I wanted to point out that Dave Meltzer is enjoying the segments with Jesse James. He says they have been really good. Some bad news, Farouk has suffered a hamstring injury during a house show. So he is now questionable to work his pay-per-view match against Mark Marrow. So we may or may not see him at Buried Alive. I thought of you, Bartlett, when I read this. WWF's reports are that Ken Shamrock... his demands were much higher than what they're paying everyone else that's coming in new. So those negotiations reportedly went nowhere for now. And last piece of news here, Live Wire has gone from bad to worse. This past week, they dumped Vic Venom, Jim Cornette, and Doc Hendricks and left the show with just Todd Pettengill and Sonny. Sonny's role was turned into a total bimbo with the whole show built around her changing into outfits behind a curtain and Todd drooling over it.
Oh my God.
Oh, man.
They also did an angle where Sonny was pretending to get love letters from Hulk Hogan, which Dave Meltzer says just cheapens the company and makes them look like a distant number two. And that is all.
Wow. Good God. It's good to be here with you, Sonny. Just imagine all of the bad innuendo and puns.
That's probably, I think that was, what's that? That was like a Saturday morning show. I'd probably be, I don't know, switching over to Saved by the Bell or something.
Yeah.
How many weeks did Vic Venom make it?
Well, I guess like 1 or 2, but I don't know if those guys are officially done or if they were just off this week. I don't know.
Folks, we are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at In Your House 11, Buried Alive, with matches featuring the Smoking Guns, Mark Marrow, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.